It's good to be back on the Gotham blog, even though you're not in the Gotham City.
What's in the name, right? It's amazing. I forgot what it was like to I forgot what it was like to experience a 100-degree day, 105-degree day.
Yeah, it's good. It's good and bad. It's
It's,
certainly nice in the morning, isn't it? From get out there 6 a.m. till 10 o'clock. It's great, right? You're early and yeah, and then
right, right.
sometimes the late afternoons are nice.
Yeah, I was in, so what did you think about this year's US Open?
I think it's the first time that I've seen, in my opinion. Of course, my opinion isn't the popular opinion, but in my opinion, it was the first time I've seen the USGA set up a US Open for the modern game. I mean, it
Yeah,
looked like a US
I
Open.
agree.
If you missed the
Yeah,
fairway,
and
you were
it took
penalized. I feel like the way that they set up the US Open is how they should just set up weekly tour events. I can't even watch a
well,
regular
with the
tour event where a guy hits it 40 yards offline, pulls out a wedge out of some light grass, knocks it on the green, and makes birdie. I just have zero interest in that kind of golf because I'm a ball control accuracy guy. People just hitting it all over the place and
Mhm.
making birdies from the rough. It's unacceptable to me as a professional. I don't believe the game should be played like that. This US Open looked like a US Open. That being said, the golf course, what did they do with the trees? I mean, it was a
Actually, they got rid of all the trees because Henry Founds and those guys, the original concept was no trees. So they had was it Bob Ford, I think, the pro at
yeah.
Oakmont,
You interviewed him, right?
the big name. No, he's on a high level, but he was there during all the planting. So they added a lot of they planted
Well, of
trees.
course.
So originally Oakmont
Well, a
had
lot
no
of
trees.
courses originally had no trees. So LA Country Club originally had no trees, as well as all kinds of famous golf courses. From what I understand, is that Oakmont was purchased. I forget the guy that originally purchased the course back in. Okay,
Henry Founds.
purchased a farm. From what I understand, it had already been cleared. So, in other words, because Pennsylvania is a heavily wooded area, the entire state's like a forest, right?
Yeah,
So you have this
right.
cleared area, which gave him uh, a blank canvas to build a golf course. Because if he had just purchased 200 acres or whatever of just forest, he'd have a lot of work to cut down all those trees and stumps, right? So it's great to like, okay,
Right.
here's a blank canvas. It's a farm. It's been cleared. Now I'm going to come in here and design a golf course and then plant trees where I want them to be, right? So what's happening is these modern architects or people that are re-architecting courses, what are they doing? Restoration architects, they're going back and they're looking at aerial photos from the 90s or something, and they're saying, "Oh, look, there's no trees, no trees." But there are trees. They're just only this big, and they're planted. They planted trees. You can't see them from the aerial photographs
Saplings. Yeah.
from 2,000 feet in the air. That a tree that's this big will saplings down the. I mean, where's the common sense here? Of course they planted trees, and it was, if you look back at the footage. I just recently saw, was it they had it there in was it 93? Was that when Els won, or
Yeah,
94?
94. Else won and
Yeah,
Else won in a
it was a
playoff.
three-man playoff, right? With Robert,
Yeah, Lauren
Colin
Roberts,
Montgomery.
Else, and Montgomery.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
at 93 or 94? 94.
94.
94, that is a tree-lined, narrow golf course full of trees everywhere. And if you look back to 73, when Johnny Miller, had his great win there, that was a tree lined, narrow golf course. And if you go back to, was it 62 when Jack beat Palmer, right? Wasn't that? Yeah. That
Jack
was in
beat Palmer, yeah.
62, I think. And it's a tree lined course. Now, I saw an interview with somebody, one of the, I don't know, it was either a former head pro at the course or something. And he was saying that there were no trees on the course, that the trees were only uh, 10 or 10 or 12 feet tall in 1962, and that's why they had to remove all the trees. And if you look at the footage from that, it's just not true because the trees are 30 feet tall, 40 feet tall. They're huge trees in 62. So people want to rewrite history or whatever, then that's fine for them in their mind. If they want to rewrite history and say, oh, the trees are only 10 feet tall in 1962, in their mind, fine. But I'm going to say no. If you're going to put that out there as public information that this is fact, it's just not fact. I mean, anybody can just look at the footage and you can see the trees are they're more than 10 feet tall out there. The trees were big back then. So, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on with this movement towards removing trees from golf courses. I understand, of course, we all understand that the origins of the game in Scotland on the links courses and there's no trees, it's too windswept, nothing can grow out there and all that. I think at some point you've got to acknowledge that there's the American version of golf, parkland golf, which is trees. Because in this country, it's mostly trees, right? Except down in the desert, but in the Northeast and go down to Georgia and the Georgia pines and, a lot out in California, we have trees out here. And certainly
Yeah.
in the Northwest, and you play Sahali and, those courses, Everett Country Club and, Seattle area and all that. I mean, it's just trees. So trees are an integral part of American parkland golf. You can go down to
Golf design,
Australia
sure.
and you can look at how they design courses down there, and they have a different
That's a
landscape down
sand
there.
barrens. It's like a sand baron type
Yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah.
it's I think that's okay to have diversity in the game. It's not a bad thing to they s- certainly do in tennis, right? I mean, to win the US Open, Wimbledon, the French, the Australian, I don't know if those are the four majors in tennis. Aren't they on different surfaces? One's on grass, one's on clay, one's on
Yeah, there are
concrete.
different surfaces and there's clay
So,
and yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
master that game at all those different surfaces, it would mean something. And I think in golf, you definitely have the British game, the link style. That's a certain style of play. You have the American parkland golf. You have the Masters, which is kind of its own unique kind of approach to playing.
Yeah.
And if you go down to Australia, I've always argued that I think the Australian Open should be the fourth major more than the PGA Championship because
Major.
the PGA Championship was unique when it was a match play event. So that's a different kind of golf. And it used to be match play, and it's if I won the match play, I won the stroke play. But the PGA then turns into a stroke play event, and they're playing the same courses that the U.S. Open plays, right? I mean, a lot of they share the same courses. Like there's been a PGA Championship at the same course that they've had U.S. Open. So it's what's unique about the
Sure.
PGA? The PGA of America was a respectable organization in this country, but as far as why is the PGA of America any
Mm.
more important than the PGA of Europe or the UK or Australia or whatever. So I think the Australian Open actually offers a unique style of golf down there. And I know this because I played the tour down there for 4 years. I played in 4 Australian Opens. And I know it to be different than American Parkland golf or what we see in the Open or the British Open. So it's a bit odd that because golf is a global game, that three of the world's majors are on US soil. I think maybe the Masters and the US Open. The Masters does have a history and it is a unique event and a lot, I think it's proven its worthiness as a major. The US Open, certainly the Open
Absolutely.
in the UK. If you look at the
The
Australian
Open
Open, if you look at
Championship. Yeah.
the people that have won that tournament going way back, you see all the same people. I mean, Nicholas went down there a bunch of times, and Gary Player won it a bunch of times. A lot of the great Greg Norman, a
Greg
lot of the great
Norman.
Australian players,
Greg
Norm
Norman.
Beniden, you guys going way back that won that tournament. So it's quite impressive, I think, to win that tournament. In my mind, I really think that should be considered the fourth major, and then the PGA and the Tournament Players Championship and some of these other events.
Well, that should be I kind of agree with you in that the PGA is kind of a watered down
It
version of
is.
the US
It's a
Open.
watered down.
The standards are lower, so the scores are much lower, and so, yeah, I mean, that should
Yeah,
be a
because what is it?
consideration.
What is the PGA
Now, in
Championship? Like,
terms
why is that a major? Why?
because I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. It wasn't a major before, and then, you know, the fact of the matter is the field is watered down because you're exempting club pros. There's no disrespect to the club professionals, but there should be like a qualifier. In other words, it's really
It
a closed
is.
shop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, if you're not a member, if you're not a PGA, if you're not a PGA member, PGA of America, you really have no route to qualifying for that fourth major, unless it's an invitation,
Yeah.
right? In other words, it's closed to amateurs. It's closed to good golfers out there that aren't PGA members and aren't on the tour, that aren't getting world rankings. So if you get a Cinderella story, it'll be a John Daly type of thing, a guy on the Nationwide or something like that. It's like the seventh alternate and gets in, but there won't be much of that because there's not.
Yeah. If it was still a match play
But
event, then it offers something unique, right? And that's
but again, if it's a match play event and it's
right.
open to
Yeah.
everybody, yeah, you can't say that you're. See, a major, in my opinion, would say that, oh well, we're evaluating and quantifying who the best players in the world are. And when you talk about the world, it's a global perspective. It's everybody,
Yeah. So
right?
how many times has Riviera hosted the US Open?
Uh, I don't know, but more
Yeah.
than
And
twice.
and I know they had the PGA there, like when Steve Elkington won the PGA at that
That
was
was
a Riviera
95,
event. So
95.
what's the difference
Yeah.
between those two events? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is one the PGA and one the US Open? They're playing the same golf course. I think it's silly actually. Say, okay, well, this is the PGA Championship. It's on the same golf course. I mean, it'd be like winning the Masters. It's like, well, you didn't win the Masters, even though it was played at Augusta and it was all the most of all the top players. But that week, it was just called the PGA Championship. So you didn't win the Masters. But it
Yeah.
seems silly to me. But there's a lot of silly things.
Well, Riviera has hosted the 48 Open, 83 PGA, 95 PGA, 98 Senior Open, and 2017 Amateur.
It's only had the U.S.
So,
Open once. Then, okay,
yeah.
twice.
No,
Okay,
twice.
twice.
48 and no,
Once.
once. So one U.S. Open and two PGAs, and then a Senior Open.
Yeah. So
But, to your point about the trees, though, so I was up at Wingfoot, and I think it might have been 1998, 99 when Davis loved the third one with the rainbow and uh, his father's birthday anniversary or whatever. No, that was 98, I believe. Um, and that's a Tillinghast course, and it's kind of a beast, along the lines of Oakmont, but not as penal. But the trees had overgrown into the fairway. There were limbs overhanging into the fairway, and at that point,
well,
you got
yeah,
to do
but you
something.
can you can
You know
trim
what I mean?
branches
At
on
that
trees.
point,
I mean, just like people cut their lawn. I mean, if you don't do anything, yeah. I mean, it needs to be manicured. Trees can be.
but hey, listen, it's not like we're talking one of the most exclusive clubs in the country hosting a major. There must have been something more to it because the following year or two, they just removed a
You're
whole
talking
bunch of
about
trees. And I mean, no,
Winged
talking
Foot.
about
Okay,
Wingfoot.
yeah,
Wingfoot had, I mean, it might from roots, whatever. You know what I mean? After a while, it can get unplayable, and you have to do something
yeah.
about
You
it.
have to manicure the trees, of
I mean,
course. I mean, they start growing over
you get a
green and
100-year-old
this.
golf course, and that tree's just out of the tree's just out of place. Where I live, I mean, in New York at the Gotham, right? I play 100-year-old golf courses. For the course I play, Split Rock was a John Van Cleek, and it was from the WPA era, right? And it's not the same golf course today, not because you can't remove trees, right? Because the Parks Department will give you a huge fine, and then it's a huge fine, and then you have to plant like 300 trees for every one you remove. It's a real, but the Asian beetle, the Asian beetle showed up, and these trees look completely healthy, right? And inside they're just completely gutted. and they just start tubs falling all, and they bring in people from the landscape people and whatever, and they put this yellow ribbon around this. So this was coming down. It's about to go. Be careful. And it just changes the whole nature of the golf course. But I agree with you is that trees are an integral part of American golf course architecture, and they should be left
Yeah, I
alone
mean, for the most,
as long as it doesn't make the golf course
I think
unplayable.
it's more when you're talking.
And in the case of Wingfoot, these guys had to hit irons to try to thread that needle.
If let's see, it was so yeah, in the 90, it was a 94, right? 94 when Ernie Els won. So I watched a little bit of that, and on the first hole, most of the guys were hitting irons off the first tee. Even even Greg Norman,
Yeah,
hitting an iron off the first.
but that wasn't a tree
No, it
issue.
was just to get it play.
It was the same thing. You didn't want that ball in the
You
primary
had to
cut.
you had to get the ball in play, and guys were hitting a lot of irons off tees then. And the first hole, I think in 94, it was like 460 yards or something. I mean, it was long, and they were hitting irons off the
Yeah,
tees. Of course, in that era, I think we're still kind of in the basically persimmon and balata era. Transition. They hadn't
transition.
quite. They
You
hadn't
had
moved
to
into the
you had to
Tiger era where
transition.
everybody's hitting it, 350.
Well, Ping still made a wooden club, so Ping still hadn't made a metalhead
Yeah, I
at
know
that
that
point.
like looked like Colin Montgomery was hitting like a tailor-made burner or something. It had the small head on it, it was small.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you
the
had the
ball
smaller
was
heads.
going the distance that a good persimmon player would hit it or whatever. And they're hitting irons off tees to get it in play. And in this year's US Open, I didn't see anybody hitting irons off tees anywhere. It was still just tee it, rip it, hope it gets in the fairway. It looked like the fairways were more generous, more wide open than.
They offset the lack of trees with fast running fairways. What they had was what it appeared to me was that they had a second cut of rough before the primary that kind of kept it from rolling into the
Mhm.
nasty stuff. You know what I mean? Where you could still have a shot. I think like the first day it played relatively easy compared to what Oakmont should have been. Right? The first day guys were playing pretty, but then it started to grow teeth, and then it rained, and then you had, you know, casual water everywhere and wet rough, and you know. Well, Johnny Miller said it best. He said, you have to. There should be a premium on the fairway, and if you're not hitting fairways like Bryson, you'll be home for the weekend, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, apparently, they'd interviewed Jack and Arnie and Gary Player when they removed all the trees out there, and none of them liked it. They were really quite upset about it, actually. And they got criticized for being out of touch with the modern game or whatever. Well, times have changed and all this stuff. And I think when those three guys have
I don't
a good
understand
day.
why that was just a modern game because Gil Hans was hired to restore it. I guess that's what they must have concluded that that's what the original intent of the,
But how can
you know,
I just don't buy that argument because the original intent was it was a farm and there were no trees. They built a course and they planted trees. The trees didn't just grow from wildly coming out of the ground or whatever, I don't think. I mean, they planted those trees. Of course, the early aerial photographs would show that there's no trees. I saw pictures of LA Country Club, from the whenever they built in the 1920s or 30s or something, and the early aerial photographs show no trees. And
I
but
mean,
they
sure. I
planted
mean,
trees.
it's like just like everywhere else.
You can't see
Let's
from
play,
the aerial
play
photographs.
this
They
place
can't see
called
that the trees are only 2 feet tall. They're little pine saplings down the airways or whatever
yeah.
that they planted. I remembered as a kid, there was a course. It was called Camarillo Springs, and it was in the town. I lived in Thousand Oaks, and the next town over was Camarillo. And there was a brand new golf course. And I remember my dad taking me there. I mean, I was probably 8 years old or something, 8 or 9 years old. And the course opens up. Oh, Camarillo Springs, we're going to go play this new course. And I remembered they planted trees. They were just little saplings. Like they were just, 2 feet tall, 3 feet tall. And they were all over the place down both sides of the fairway. I'm sure if I went there now, it would be a huge trees down both sides of the fairway, unless of course they've removed them all because somebody found the old aerial photographs when there's
Yes, nothing like playing a
silly
new course
argument
with
to
a good.
say, we're going to restore it to the original intentions when obviously they planted trees. They did.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing those new courses, and I remember I played this course, Wallkill, when they had just opened. So when they dredged it, whatever they did there to clear and grub it, they pushed all the rocks into the woods. Not the woods, but like, I guess the woods, right? And to hit an errant tee shot. So you got a clear line of sight, but you're sitting in
Rock.
nothing but rocks. That's so scary. Yeah, yeah. But I think in the end, it played out like the U.S. Opens used to
Yeah,
play
I,
out.
I I think so. It was interesting.
It was
Yeah, it was
dramatic till the
interesting
end.
to see that there was some value on hitting the ball straight. So that's refreshing.
I think they made up for the loss. They made up for the loss of trees with
Well, yeah, I mean,
that
if you
rough.
grow the rough 4 feet tall down the stuff, you can make any course impossible. I mean, if you just grow the rough this high, I mean, you could take any course and make it like impossible. Um, I think to me, what's more interesting is when you have a golf course that's relatively narrow. Like you have to, if you hit a good drive, you're in the fairway. You don't think you need 15-yard wide fairways or anything. But what's more interesting is where you have to hit the ball down the correct side of the fairway to open up the angle to the pin, for instance. Like if the pin's cut back left, you can hit it down the right side and kind of open up your angle into the pin if you're coming in with a longer iron or a mid iron. If you're coming in with a wedge, it doesn't matter. But that's what I miss about the old game is the requirement to have to hit long irons into par fours several times around. If you look at a typical par 72 golf course, four par fives, four par threes, you have 10 par fours, right? Of those 10 par fours, they'd be equally divided up between long iron approaches, mid iron approaches, and short iron approaches. That's the idea of testing the golfer throughout his bag. Like, are you a good long iron player? Are you a good mid iron player? Are you a good wedge, short iron player? That,
Even a
yeah.
fairway wood player,
And there's
you
times
know.
where the par fours where you'd have to come in with a fairway wood sometimes. There was a shells match at Brookline that I'd posted on my site, and it showed the difference between I think it was a shells match with Doug Sanders and Billy Casper, and they're playing the first hole, and they're both coming in with fairway woods. And then I fast forward to a couple years ago when Rory's playing it and he's hitting a sand wedge in to the first hole, and these guys,
Yeah, but Sanders and Casper were a pair of short knockers. Remember now, Casper laid up at Wingfoot 4 days in a row. Eight par
yeah,
and one, but
my point
you know
being these are guys that were top PGA Tour players. I mean, Casper was a leading money winner several times in the 1960s when in the game.
he's got 53 tour wins.
Yeah,
He's
I mean, one of
underrated.
the
I mean,
greatest
in my
players of
opinion,
all time,
Billy
really.
Casper's a great player.
And
Of
here's a guy
course,
who's
yeah,
coming
he's
in
got to be in the
coming
top
in with
10.
a 3 wood into the first hole at Brookline, driver 3 wood. Um, I think that's and he knocks it on the green. So I mean that to me is
Right.
more impressive than just bombing some drive out there. You're in the light rough or whatever, pull out a wedge or a sand wedge and flip it on the green. It's like, okay, well, big deal. What's that? I mean, I to sit there and have to navigate a 3 wood into that green. The green's not that big. You're hitting it with a 3 wood. Sanders, I think, was just off the edge or something's coming in with a 4 wood. I think it was the 10th hole, Casper. If I remember right, it was the 10th or 11th hole. There was water in front of the green, and Casper hit a drive and a 2 iron from a downhill lie over water, fully protected in the front, coming in with a 2 iron, knocks it on the green and makes the putt for birdie, right? I mean, that's impressive. Driver, 2 iron, over water putt. Much more interesting to me to see that than a guy hitting it down there flipping a wedge in. you know? This whole idea of,
Yeah, yeah.
golf getting so out of control at the distance to where the ball's going 50 yards farther. It's going about 50 yards farther with the combination of the modern driver. Still believe it's much more the club than the ball, you know?
But see, what I think what's changed is the risk reward aspect
Yes,
of that.
absolutely.
So when we go back into, I'm going to say the 80s, everybody that was a long hitter wouldn't dare try it. You know, guys were saying, "Hey, I'd rather have a 6 iron from the fairway than a 9
Yeah,
iron from the rough."
yeah.
Right? So Curtis Strange, again, I keep, Curtis Strange was a bomber at Wake Forest, right? Meanwhile, he's winning back-to-back US Opens, averaging 241 off the
Mhm.
tee. You follow me? It's not like that there was there was a penalty. You would be severely penalized if, first of all, it narrowed in. The corridors became more narrow as you got further from the tee, right? And, it was more generous. The landing areas were a lot more generous. So if you could bomb it and thread the needle, then you should get rewarded. But, in this case, bomb and gauge is not,
Well,
that's
yeah,
my
I mean,
opinion.
we share the same opinion on that. We're just like a couple of old guys shouting at the clouds or whatever, right? And that's how the young people look at us. But I'd take some of the young players out when Mare Island was open, and I was playing out there a few years ago, and it was 60, I don't know, 6,200 yards, 6,300 yards, and I'd take a college player. I had a couple college All Americans out there. I hardly even play at all, and I just wipe them out because I'm hitting it straight. And they're hitting it all over the place with the modern gear. I'd shoot 70, 71. They'd shoot 78. Just pick them apart. You can't miss shots out there. You hit it offline,
Right.
out of bounds, lost ball, unplayable. I mean, two-shot penalty basically. You do that 4 times around, that's 8 shots. There's your 78 right there. So, of
Sure.
course, my point is a course doesn't have to be, long to be interesting. I mean, look at where they had well,
Olympic. Olympic Club.
yeah, and where was it they had Marion, right? They had the US Open there. What in like
Marion.
early like 2010 or somewhere around 13? Yeah, okay,
2013.
2013.
Yeah, Justin Rose
Yeah,
won it.
and they didn't tear that place up, and I think it was playing 6,800 yards the last day. So the modern gear doesn't work out there when you have to hit it straight. So,
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So they had the Open at Marion. This year they played the Philadelphia Cricket Club, right? And Rory says, "Oh man, this course was just 500 yards longer to accommodate the modern game." But they didn't. They did not tear that little course up. You know what I mean? It held its own. It held its own against, and that's classic golf course
yeah.
design. That's part of that Philadelphia school where all those great architects came from. Even the guy who did all the California stuff was named George
Yeah, I
Thomas
mean,
came from there.
you can
Tillinghast came out
protect
of
the
there.
course by growing the rough long. I mean, at some point, it's just 3 feet high, and if you miss the fairway, you make double or whatever, you can't have to wedge it out. But does that really make a course a great course? I think what's a great course is where you have to play the angles. You've got to position it down the left side of the fairway with the pins back right, and you're trying to get a shot in there. Trajectories coming into the greens. Long irons are going to have lower trajectories. The greens need to be designed to accept those kind of trajectories. If you look at Augusta, like 10 and 11 would be narrow greens but deep to come in with long irons, sort of skipping in there. Back in the day, nobody spun the ball back on those greens. You never saw that. The ball was coming in with a long iron, a 3 or 4 iron hitting into the green. Nobody's spinning those things back. The greens on 13 and 15 were wide, but they were shallow and protected in the front. So now you're coming in with similar club, a long iron or fairway wood, lower trajectory shot. You got to be really precise with that shot. It's got to land in the first third of the green to have any chance of holding it on the green with a low trajectory shot. Years later, their guys are hitting, chipping 8 irons in there and stuff like that. It's not really. I mean, as a professional player myself, I mean, that's just not interesting to me. Like, I just have no interest in seeing guys hitting an iron into.
Well, but remember now, those holes were like 490 par fours. for par fives, 490
But
something,
yeah,
and the shot. If you could draw it around the corner, right, and catch the downhill slope, it was you'd be living large. You'd be living
absolutely.
lovely.
So you have that risk and reward thing, and for some reason, these things aren't really talked about much in the modern game, and I guess it's just kind of in the history bin now or whatever. Nobody talks about this stuff at all. I think they really need to design courses for the modern game that are probably 8,000 yards. If you add the ball's going 15% farther from what I understand. I was talking to my friend Sam Randolph. Sam was saying, this is a few years ago. He said the ball's going about 15% farther. So if you take a 6,900-yard course and you add 15% to that, you come out just about at 8,000 yards. So that would bring long irons back into play where guys have to come in with, 2 and 3 irons into par fours. Maybe they, par fours are 560 yards or something, and they have to hit driver 3 iron or something like that. But how does that make the game better? Like, does it make it more interesting? I mean, what if they did that with baseball? And so the ball goes, 100 feet farther, and now they have to tear down all the ballparks and build new stadiums where the
They let you use aluminum bats in
right.
college, right? Don't know why. They should just go wood all the way through. Maybe it's budgetary concerns. So, if they went to aluminum bats in the major leagues, you'd have to make these stadiums maybe 50 feet longer, 100
Well,
feet
that's
longer
been the argument.
to maintain the same standard.
I think golf made a mistake a long time ago when they allowed. I'm not really when I think about it more, I kind of think it's the PGA Tour because if I mean the USJ can have their rules and the drops and all this stuff, but if the PGA Tour would have said, "Okay, you're in the big leagues now," just like baseball, you're in the major leagues. When you're in the major leagues, here's a piece of lumber, and you're going to have to hit a 90-mile-an-hour breaking ball with a piece of lumber because you're in the big leagues. The big leagues, right? If golf had taken that same approach,
Sure.
if the PGA Tour, I should really say the PGA Tour had taken that approach, okay, now you're on the PGA Tour. Okay, so those metal woods and frying pan drivers and big Berthas and all that stuff they used to use in college and junior golf, that's all fine. And people can still play that stuff at that level. But you're in the big leagues
Mhm.
now. This is the PGA Tour, and you're going to hit persimmon because this is what the big boys do. Big players persimmon. You can play the real game now. I think if the PGA Tour would have put their foot down in the 80s and just said persimmon, big leagues like baseball, nobody cries about baseball using wooden bats or, oh, it's archaic. Baseball's got to get with the times and we need a polypropylene ball with a titanium bat that's this big around so shortstops can hit 200 home runs a year. Won't that be exciting? Just bunts go out of the park or whatever. How exciting that would be. I mean, baseball knew not to do that. They kept the tradition, the integrity of the
Yeah.
game. Golf made a mistake as far as I'm concerned. And I would say really PGA Tour because that's really the benchmark. And I think if the PGA Tour would have done that, the European Tour probably would have followed along with that. Maybe the Australian Tour, the big major professional
All the
global
world
tours.
tours are
You're in the
true.
big leagues. It's persimmon. It's wood. We're going to contain the game and keep the metrics the same, so that a 6,800-yard U.S. Open course is the same course that they were playing back in the 50s or 60s. So if the young player goes out and shoots 8, 10 under in a U.S. Open, it's like, wow.
It's comparable to what they did in the 50s. I agree because the baseball hasn't changed. So 60 home runs Ruth hit, save for the performance enhancing drugs and shit like that, the bat and the ball, it's just, it's the same stadiums. And in fact, the older stadiums were longer. So,
Yeah,
you know,
and that's charming about baseball that all the stadiums are kind of different, right? They have different dimensions, and it's not
right.
just a uniform.
Sure.
Isn't Fenway Park with the green wall and it's a different length?
It's 317 is a
Yeah,
short,
short
high
high
green
wall
wall.
or
Yeah.
whatever. It's interesting and nostalgic and historic and all those sort of things. And golf certainly could have had that opportunity to maintain all of that. And now that's just way out the window. And the game is just completely turned into some other thing, which I hope at some point. But what's going to happen is there'll have to be a new organization. The USJ is not going to budge. They're just doing their crazy thing or whatever and rolling the ball back. I mean, we'll roll the ball back? Are you kidding me? What? What are they talking about? Roll the ball back to what? I mean, what are they trying to do by rolling the ball back? Are they going to roll it back to where it should be, where the ball goes 50 yards less? The compression of the ball would have to be about 10 or something, like a 10 compression ball or 20 compression ball, so that a modern frying pan driver goes 250 yards. I mean, it'd have to be like hitting a tennis ball out there or something. So they're going to roll it back to what? To 2005 metrics? What are they even proposing with this? If they really want to address the
Well,
problem, then they got to address the driver, the club itself. That's the problem.